I think it's a very long way off to say that there's a humanless battlefield. I think for me, the human intelligence, and I'm learning every day, people who have been in battle, 5, 6, 10 tours of battle, that people that I work with, their knowledge is unbelievable. And I don't think we can just feed the machines that knowledge. I think there'll be less humans in the loop, but I don't see a day, at least not tomorrow, where there's humanless battle because of human intelligence, which we still need.
Welcome to Design This Day, a podcast about the future, the futures we want, and the people working right now to make those futures real. I'm your host, Devin Liddell. I'm a futurist at Teague. I spend a lot of my time thinking about the gap between present challenges and future solutions. Today, I'm speaking with Robert Walker, VP and Head of Design and Engineering at Detroit Defense. Before shifting into the defense world, Robert spent over 2 decades in the automotive industry, leading design for some of Ford and GM's most iconic vehicles. Now, he's applying that experience to the radically different challenge of designing tactical vehicles for military use. It's a dramatic shift, and one that raises big questions about how design adapts when the stakes are life and death. Robert and I started our conversation by revisiting his first few days on the job at Detroit Defense. What was your first day or your first week like at Detroit Defense? I mean, after 3 decades in automotive, it had to have been a little bit different, right?
Detroit Defense, when I walked in, had no design department. So this is something I'm building.
It's like you're designer one.
Yes. In an extremely exciting way, it's in the startup phase, and we'll be hiring and all of that. So I came into a engineering group, and there were acronyms in automotive, which after 30 years, I thought I knew all of them, and I still didn't. And so you can imagine in 90 days, learning a whole new book of acronyms is, it's unbelievable.
I can only imagine, yeah.
And just also the language of defense, sir and ma'am, is still used even in the office when you're addressing different ranks. Again, it's a whole new world for me. So I would say going back to my first week, I saw a lot of engineering. I saw a lot of prototypes. I went to our local Army arsenal and saw these vehicles. And I would say scale was pretty incredible. When you're standing next to some of these real tactical vehicles, they're huge, right? And they're big and they're matte finished. And they're just these awe-inspiring vehicles. And, I tried on communications helmets that soldiers wear and drove the Humvee. So it was quite a week.
When you were looking at prototypes, were there any things that you sort of like immediately sort of thought to yourself like, oh, I know how that's going to look or work or be different 3 months from now after I've had more time to kind of like get going?
Yeah, absolutely. And that went down to like PowerPoints and presentations and everything because the design the design lens is everything, every single thing in the office. The pens we use, I have an opinion on. So I kind of have to stop. It goes home too. And my wife, it's like design is every element of my life. I'm looking and observing and thinking, wow, if that button just was over here, or if, that radius, or how does this fit and finish happen? So yes, I saw many things that I knew I could have a positive impact on.
Nice. Okay, I love it.
So, yes. But that's, again, why I was hired. So it's good. It's good.
Totally. For me, it brings up some memories. Like when I took my first design job, I consider myself as a design strategist. I've always wanted to be around designers, of course. I do have a vivid memory of in my first design company that I ever worked in, I think it was on my second or third day, me and a bunch of designers went to the movies. That, just straightforward. And the movie ended and I thought, oh, well, now we'll discuss the movie. And no, it actually jumped into a big discussion about the type used in the credits.
Yes, exactly.
And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. This is how they're wired.
We often say that design, it's a curse, disease, what have you, in a positive way, right? But I remember in automotive, we had to know when to say when to stop, when is it done. A designer's file system on their computer, or the file is always final, 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 final. That's always the joke, right? Version 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, exactly. Robert isn't just adjusting typefaces and changing the type of pens in the office. He's bringing a design mindset into an environment where that way of thinking hasn't always been prioritized. But in defense, design has real consequences. It can mean the difference between a successful mission and serious injury or worse. And some of the most critical changes don't even require new technology. They come from paying attention to what people actually need in the field.
A great example is a Humvee, if you know the big military vehicle. And I've driven one in my first 90 days. It does not have a backup camera, a rear view camera.
Okay.
Most modern cars do. And if you've had a car with it and then gone back to one without, it's extraordinarily
It's jarring.
challenging. Yes. Soldiers were getting hurt very badly. So you would have to have a soldier get out and signal, hand signals, and try to move the vehicle that way. And this is the year 2025. A modern day consumer vehicle, commercial vehicle, most have backup cameras. But someone in the harshest of conditions who at those moments do not want to leave the safety of a Humvee to guide directions, you can imagine. So that's an example of tech that's drastically needed from a commercial element that's not in the defense world.
And the automotive world is not Robert's only source of inspiration. Just a few months into the new job, he is already finding different and perhaps surprising ways to put himself in the shoes of the modern warfighter.
I lead the software team here at Detroit Defense, and funny enough, many of them are gamers, and they're in that slightly older mid-20s demographic and heavy gamers. And I'm actually learning from them that gaming really drives a lot of their worldview,
Right.
if you will.
I know these people.
Yeah, from the headsets they wear, the chairs, the seat, the home setup, it's really a dynamic that I'm learning. But yet my point is we're also thinking about that as we design warfighter systems, right? Helmets, comm systems. We get into things such as haptics or things that feedback that's not a surface design piece, but it's there and it's very important. If you're in a battlefield and there's no communications, but you need to speak or connect with another soldier, how can you do that? And you can't see them, you can't hear them. So haptics is something I'm really diving into. And that all comes from gaming.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, haptics is a huge part of the game experience. Even in non-warfare simulation games. I mean, if you're even a driving game, after you steer off into the dirt road and you know it because the
Well, even back to the car example, if you're backing up with your rear view camera, in some cars, your seat, if you're getting too close to that tree, your seat on that side of the car will actually buzz, like if it's right or left. And so that gives you like, oh, wow, I'm going to hit something. So there's the visual and the haptics and the sound. So there's 3 levels of safety there. And those are the kind of, again, commercial or civilian systems that we're looking at very closely and trying to implement into defense systems.
You mentioned earlier that there would be scenarios where warfighters would be injured, actually. Just simple act of backing up a Humvee, right?
Yes.
So I'm curious, like from your vantage point, like are there particular metrics or aspirations on your part where you think to yourself, if I project where I am 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, I hope I will have helped to design things that, for example, make soldiers safer or make soldiers more effective? Or like, is there a particular metric or North Star that's especially important for you? Even if it's not shared across the company, like it's especially important for you.
I think it's different from when I was in automotive, because in automotive, the success is almost, I would say, joy, if that makes sense.
Right.
People love their new car and they it becomes their personality. And they, as I mentioned before, when you see someone in a car, you instantly have some idea about who they may be. And it's a game I play with my kids. But they do it with animals, but that's another game. But, that car is this or that. But if you see a Jeep or you see a luxury car or something, there's different personas and personalities that go with that. In defense, that's thrown out the window. It's a completely different element. The joy is that this system saved my life, not its aesthetic qualities or what it conveys to others, for example.
Right. Less of a badging experience. Yeah.
Yes. That's my mission, is that everything we touch and do is done with that lens of the 18 or 19-year-old who's in a precarious situation that our work will help to make sure they get home.
For Robert, the goal is clear: design tools and systems that help more people get home safely. But as AI starts to play a larger role in missions, it begs the question about the need for human presence on the battlefield at all. The role for humans in conflict zones may look entirely different in 10, 15 years, but Robert says a human presence will still be essential. He sees a future where automation and AI work alongside people, not in place of them. Because human experience and intuition still shape the kinds of decisions machines can't fully make.
Yeah, this is a complex space. I would say, because obviously if you take humans out of the loop, then there's less death. I mean, ultimately, right? And so I think right now there's human decision making that is, and there's people who, I think there's human intelligence. We talk about artificial intelligence so much, but there's human intelligence that's critical in the loop. I think it's a very long way off to say that there's a humanless battlefield. I think for me, the human intelligence, and I'm learning every day, people who have been in battle, 5, 6, 10 tours of battle, that people that I work with, their knowledge is unbelievable. And I don't think we can just feed the machines that knowledge. I think there's a human element that's unbreakable. And no GPT can replace lived. We talk a lot about lived experience here and the respect for the lived experience. So, yeah, I think there's an easy talking point that sounds great, where it's machine-only battle. I think there'll be less humans in the loop, but I don't see a day, at least not tomorrow, where there's humanless battle because of human intelligence, which we still need.
Another tension that is top of mind for Robert is the one between design and engineering. Robert leads both teams at Detroit Defense, and these disciplines often gravitate toward different approaches when it comes to problem solving.
It's always been this healthy design versus engineering tension. But to lead both groups is a very interesting space to be in, where it's kind of you have two groups on either shoulder, and you want to serve them both.
I love that. It's actually part of the Teague lore. Walter Dorwin Teague, when he did early in Teague's existence, did some really formative work for Kodak. And one of the things he did was he insisted on the co-location of design and engineering teams. And that's similar to what you're undertaking, which is like less sort of maneuvering or reconciling the natural tension between design and engineering, and more kind of bringing the two functions together just from the start.
Correct. And then also, in automotive, you always have the term creative designer. But I always used to, and now even more, talk about creative engineering. So I'm really pushing my engineering team in new ways to express their craft. I also lead software and applied AI. So putting all of those together is really phenomenal, because the meetings we have, things come up in meetings and discussions because everyone's coming from such different places. But I think it's a huge strength, and we're really having some phenomenal conversations that wouldn't otherwise happen, even in just a design-only context.
Right.
Yeah, when you bring all of this together, it's this unbelievable push and pull.
It's a mindset that's helping Robert double down on a culture-shifting priority, enabling more rapid prototyping, sometimes even without a formal contract in place. In defense, work often starts only after requirements trickle down from the top, and building on spec is not typical. But as a seasoned designer, Robert knows taking on some risk earlier in the process means more opportunity to test and solve problems before they escalate in the field.
Ultimately, I want to get faster at prototyping those, getting those from paper or whiteboard to in the hands of someone, various fidelity quickly, so that we get feedback and then go right back into it. And ultimately get it into a contractable product.
Yeah, here at Teague, we call that prototyping process like thinking through making. Like to your point about like getting something done quickly, like there's so much to be gained when you actually just make something quickly, and then you realize, oh, actually, we will immediately learn things that we wouldn't have made if we didn't make this.
Right. Yeah, that's not spec based. Let's go in the prototyping lab and start, cutting metal and get in there. And then I always like that you get in, you make something rough fidelity, but you can poke holes at it. But it's easier said. Not every company abides by that. There's so many companies that are just, where's the spec and we'll make it. But we're absolutely not in that. We are capable of doing that and we have systems out there, but we are very much into what's next and thinking future forward, I'd say.
And to riff on that, to your point, like every industry also has what I would describe as sort of like different tolerances for fidelity.
Yes. Yes.
And so I'm curious, like from your experience so far, like within defense, like what's the lowest fidelity prototype? What's the lowest type of fidelity that you could imagine actually showing a warfighter, for example?
3D printing is our friend. Three-dimensional data is so easy these days. I grew up in the time of Alias and, was kind of the only 3D software. And now we have so many things just over the counter, if you will, and to do 3D models and are then printable, right? So I think we're getting in the prototyping space is extremely exciting because we can get things and digital as well. So you can combine the physicality, the digital. So you can get a little bit more than duct tape and cardboard these days very quickly and not without much expense. So it's come down to a point where your prototype fidelity has gone up just naturally by the tools and materials that are available.
All right, quick lightning round. So, what's your take on the most overhyped technology at the moment?
I think we touched on this, or I touched on this earlier, and I would say what I call the AI that replaces humans narrative. I think we've seen plenty of movies in the last 20 years that also push on that. I think it's too much. I think it also goes with kind of the fully embodied robots, house cleaning robots and things like that. In that whole space, I'd rather see a robot do something that's very hard and very dangerous. That's where I'd like to see a robot versus folding my clothes. And so I think that's overhyped at the moment.
I love that. Well, to your point, like actually building a robot capable of folding clothes is really hard.
It is. It is.
That's a complicated and thus expensive machine. Whereas, like to your point, I'd rather have a robot that's like just focuses on my toilets.
Exactly. Right. Or yes, there's this show that used to be around called Dirty Jobs. I think I
Right.
forgot.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think the robots could do well. But I think also in the battlefield, if we're in the warfighter context, let's look more in those spaces where it is extremely dangerous for humans. I'd love to see robots in that space.
Totally. That was fantastic. I love that. What about like, is there a particular industry? I'll take automotive off the board since you're steeped in it. But like beyond automotive, is there another industry that you kind of look at and think, oh, they're actually doing that category is doing something interesting that could be portable to what I'm doing?
Yeah, I like what Samsung is doing now because I follow Mauro Porcini, And he was, he was with 3M and then PepsiCo for a long time, and now with Samsung. I've really admired the way he leads in design, because it's much more than, again, it's design with a capital D, it's design, and he's also very much into the human and the emotion, and everything comes back to the human element. And so what I'm seeing out of Samsung, and then the way they're doing AI and approaching it, looks like an interesting space. So I'm going to keep track of that. Yeah. I didn't want to say Apple.
I like it. I like the Samsung example. A little more unexpected. That's it for today. Thank you for listening to Design This Day, a podcast by Teague. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss the next episode. And if you have a complex problem that needs solving, we'd love to hear from you. Visit us at teague.com or send us an email at hello@teague.com.
You can overuse human-centered, and I'm actually trying to find new ways of saying it.
Let me know when you find a replacement.